The Senate, they just went ahead and passed this continuing resolution, a CR, basically just like a temporary Band-Aid for the budget to keep the government funded and running. And the vote, by the way, was 54 to 46, so it passed, obviously, and it's going straight to President Trump's desk for his signature. This particular vote, man, it really opened up this this kind of huge can of worms within the Democratic Party. There's a lot of disagreement going on about this.
It seems like something procedural, right? Just keeping the lights on. But it really highlights some pretty deep divisions within the Democratic Party about the best way to handle, all this funding stuff with President Trump in office.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. We've got Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's, a Democrat, and he actually came out in support of this CR. He voted yes.
Right. So Schumer's logic, and he actually laid this out pretty clearly, was he straight up called this CR a terrible option, like not beating around the bush there. But he also said that if the government shuts down with Trump as president, things would be, and this is a quote, far worse.
He even, went a little further and said that a shutdown would give this thing he called duo-GE, and, it's not an official term or anything, but it seems pretty clear he's combining Donald with something that's pointing at, like, Elon Musk's power, maybe dominance. So it's like this shorthand for this idea of these two figures having all this power, and nobody's really able to keep them in check. And here's the thing, right? We got to remember that this House bill, the one that the Senate just passed, it actually faced a lot of pushback from Democrats when it was in the House. So there was already this clear difference in opinion, like right off the bat, between the two chambers.
Absolutely. That initial opposition in the House really sets the stage for what we're seeing unfold now in the Senate. It tells us that for a lot of Democrats, this wasn't just about avoiding a shutdown. There were serious problems with the CR from the get-go.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she didn't hold back at all. I mean, she went right out and said that Schumer's decision to support the CR, it caused this, and I'm quoting her here, deep sense of outrage and betrayal across the entire Democratic Party. And, she was very clear that this isn't just like a progressive thing. This is a feeling that's pretty widespread, because she's basically saying, look, these representatives, they went out there, they made some tough promises to protect programs like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, the stuff that really matters to people.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's arguing that this CR, it directly undermines those promises.
It goes to the core of what they campaigned on. And now she's raising the question, can we actually deliver on what we promise if we support this kind of legislation?
And she also specifically called out, even considering acquiescing to Elon Musk. I mean, she really went there. And, this is likely connected to all those worries about his influence in tech, in media. This fear that the CR, it might have stuff in it or maybe doesn't have enough oversight. And that could end up, indirectly benefiting Musk's companies without any real public scrutiny, without any say from the people,
Right. And that mention of Musk, it's not just about him specifically. It's about this broader trend of, like, how much power do these extremely wealthy individuals have?
Yeah.
And are they able to exert that power to shape government policy in ways that benefit them, even if it's not in the best interest of everyone else?
Right. So, let's go back to Schumer for a second.
Yeah.
His defense, he basically framed this whole thing as a, what's that phrase? A Hobson's choice. It's basically like take it or leave it, right? Two bad options. You got to pick one.
Exactly. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that's the image she's trying to convey. Like, he's acknowledging that the CR isn't good, that it's deeply partisan, and that it doesn't even begin to address all these crucial needs that are out there. But he's saying, look, preventing a government shutdown, that has to be the top priority.
Because in his view, a shutdown, it would just hand Trump even more power, right? And it would basically create the perfect conditions for this DOGE situation to just run wild, give Trump and Musk essentially free rein.
So his framing really boils down to this idea of damage control. Like, okay, this CR, it's bad, but it's the lesser of two evils. And he's focused on preventing what he sees as a much bigger disaster, which is a government shutdown with the Trump administration calling the shots.
And, we also heard from Senator John Fetterman, and he's actually on board with Schumer. He came right out and said that avoiding a shutdown is a core responsibility of government. And he didn't mince words either. He called the shutdown a VIFTR disaster.
Right. Very blunt language there. And it really underscores this more traditional view of governance where, just keeping the government functioning, that's the fundamental duty, even if it means, having to compromise on certain policy goals in the short term.
Yeah. And he even he used this analogy. He said, Democrats are bringing casserole to a knife fight. Now, on the flip side, we've got former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and she's breaking ranks with Schumer on this one. She actually urged Senate Democrats to vote against the CR. She called it a false choice between a shutdown and what she basically sees as a blank check for Trump and Musk.
Right, Pelosi, she's not buying this argument that the threat of a shutdown is enough to justify supporting the CR. She's looking at the substance of the bill and saying, no, this is fundamentally flawed. This is going to have negative consequences. And she's not willing to just accept that as the price of avoiding a shutdown. It raises the question, were there other options on the table? Was this truly the only path forward? And Pelosi seems to be saying, no, there were other possibilities that weren't explored.
And then we get to the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And man, their disapproval goes even deeper. Senator Bernie Sanders, he came out swinging, called the CR terrible, pointed out that it was like completely written by right-wing House Republicans. And he even said that this thing, it's pushing the country toward authoritarianism.
Yeah, that's some strong language. And it reflects a very deep concern about the direction of the country. He's basically saying, look, this isn't just about budget numbers. It's about fundamental principles of democracy. He sees this CR as a dangerous shift in power away from Congress and towards the executive branch, and he's worried about the long-term implications of that.
He also said that this thing is basically setting up this slush fund for Elon Musk and Donald Trump, which, goes back to that whole duo GE thing. And he went on to list all these really specific cuts that he sees as harmful. Cuts to housing, healthcare, nutrition. He brought up Social Security being at risk, veterans continuing to get the short end of the stick, the wealthy getting richer, climate change being ignored. I mean, he laid it all out.
It shows you the depth of the policy disagreements here. This isn't just like a philosophical difference. It's about very real, concrete impacts on people's lives. And Sanders is making the case that this CR, it makes all the wrong choices. It prioritizes the wrong things.
And he was pretty harsh in his criticism of those 10 Senate Democrats who voted for it. He called it an absolute dereliction of duty. And Senator Elizabeth Warren, she was right there with him. She said that this bill, it gives Trump and Musk a blank check to spend your taxpayer money however they want.
Yeah, and that's a message that's likely to resonate with a lot of voters, right? The idea that their tax dollars are being used without any real accountability, without any say from the people. It taps into this deep distrust of government and this feeling that, the system is rigged against everyday people.
And, you had Senator Jeff Merkley. He called the House Republican plan horrific. Senator Patty Murray, and remember, she's one of the key players when it comes to appropriations. She called this bill a dumpster fire. We also heard from Senator Martin Heinrich, who voted against the CR. He described it as a power grab and emphasized the importance of Democrats uniting, especially when it comes to economic issues. And, he stressed that they need to use their leverage effectively to push back against the president. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? He was against the CR, but he also cautioned against, everyone piling on Schumer.
Right. So he's trying to walk this line. He's critical of the CR, but he also recognizes that constantly second-guessing the leadership, that's not going to be helpful in the long run. He's trying to preserve some sense of party unity, even after this very divisive vote.
It was 54-46 in favor of the CR. Every single Republican, except for Rand Paul, voted yes. And then you had 2 Democrats, Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire and Angus King from Maine. They sided with the Republicans. All the other Democrats, they voted no.
So you can see the coalition there that pushed the CR through. And the fact that you had those 2 Democrats joining the Republicans, it tells you something about the political calculations that were going on. Maybe for them, the risk of a shutdown, it outweighed their concerns about the specifics of the CR.
So, just to recap, what we witnessed here was this pretty major clash within the Democratic Party. On one side, you've got Schumer, Fetterman. Folks were saying, look, the absolute top priority is to avoid a government shutdown with Trump in the White House. But then on the other side, you've got this whole group of Democrats, AOC, Pelosi, Sanders, Warren, and they're basically saying, no way, this CR, it's just a non-starter. It's a betrayal of our values. It's a handout to Trump and Musk, and it's going to hurt working families. Our listeners, you've just heard this deep dive into all the different arguments and perspectives within the Democratic Party about this really crucial vote on government funding. Now we want to hear from you. Thinking about all the arguments for avoiding a shutdown, at any cost versus all those very strong objections to the specifics of this CR and what it might mean down the road. What do you think? What are the biggest long-term implications